Okay, kia ora koutou. We're going to make a start after lunch. Just a reminder that in your packs that you got is the QR code by which you can ask questions during the speakers and for the panel, just in case you were wondering, because we did have it up on the screen, but actually it's in your packs just if you need it. And we're going to run this session exactly the same way as we ran the last sessions. We're going to have 3 speakers and then a panel discussion so we can have some wānanga together. And our first session was based on translational research. The second session that we're moving into now, the kaupapa, is around Te Tiriti and Rangahau. Really pivotal and interesting time in our environment to talk about that. And so we have 3 amazing wahine toa to move you between lunch and afternoon tea. And it's a really great privilege for us here at Ōtākau Whakaihu Waka to have one of our University of Canterbury, Te Whare or Waitaha with us as our keynote speaker to start off with, which is Associate Professor SaschaMcMeeking. Many of you may know Sasha. She's really well known and amongst our amongst the Ngāi Tahu academics, and her incredible work that she's done in looking at anti-racism and how we can change the culture of our structures. So I'm a huge fangirl there. She's also well known for her solution building approach to working with iwi Māori. She has a background in strategy development, kaupapa Māori asset management and innovation. So I think one really cool thing about today is we're not just trying to brainwash you with health researchers, we're trying to show our diversity in our community. She has led a number of significant Ngāi Tahu initiatives, which our community has benefited from, and she's also an advocate for growing the next generation of scholars, which is quite hard to do because we don't actually look that fun to the outside world. So it's no small feat. So it's with great pleasure. So ho mai te pakipaki kia Sasha.
Tēnā koutou e rere ana nā mihi ki o koutou e nā maunga whakahi, ko hara mai nei e pāna te kaupapa nei. Tuatahi ki nā kaiwhakarite o te hui nei, ka nui timihi aroha ki o koutou. Ko waiau, he uri o tahu pōtiki, engari ko tētahi honganga ki ana te mutunga hoki. I came because I wanted to join the mafia movement that I know is on these seats, and biggest mihi to Nina and Chris and Suze for bringing us together. And on this topic of the treaty, it very much feels like we need each other. Because it's... oh, can I borrow that? Will that work? I don't need to remind you about what the headlines are doing at the moment. And arguably, this is the greatest existential assault that the treaty has experienced in about 40 years. So that is a couple of generations we are seeing unwound. And I do have a background as in law. I never grew up to be a proper lawyer because their suits have pinstripes rather than cord. But I want to say something, because I can as a failed lawyer, is that I do not think the law is our salvation at this time of existential assault. And as I say that, I want to mahi to those whose life's work we are seeing being undone, but to also carry a message that I believe some of them would have carried to us. I had the great privilege of being a graduate lawyer who got lippy when I went to work for the iwi at Foreshore and Seabed Round 1, which just makes me feel old now. And what I did with being lippy was I said to chiefs at the time, we should go to the UN. And that's where, that's the beginnings of how we got the UN findings that Foreshore and Seabed Round 1 was discriminatory. And with 18 months of graduating, I was literally at the UN with Matua Moana, living my life's dream. And as you know, we won. And it meant nothing. And that was okay, because what it looked like from the outside was that we were going there to win. We were not going there to win. We had a very intentional plan that we were going there to establish a po. The purpose was a marker. We never expected short-term change from going to the United Nations, but we needed to create something that someone else could stand on. And that's why I want to say at this time of great existential assault, it's time to recognize those markers that are already in the ground. And perhaps at this time, to move away from our base impulses. Because we all know that we have the base impulse when someone stands up that we fundamentally disagree with, we want to beat them and berate them with facts. You are wrong because, and here's my Tesco receipt list of all of the reasons why you are wrong, and let me give you 25 data points to prove your wrongness. And what we know from research is that all that combative approach does is further polarizes the debate. It is utterly redundant in creating effective change. And I think at this time of existential assault, we need to do something that will be hard for us. We need to move away from wanting to win the symbolic point to we lost a bit on this slide. There's supposed to be I am, but we just have I, which looks like I'm very whakahihi. My apologies. And it really should have been we are. Because at this time, we have to recognize that 40 years of habit-breaking work has been done. Yes, the abstract rights are under direct attack. Yes, the abstract rights are being undone. I'm not debating that point, and I would certainly never excuse it. But what I also think about are the remarkable shifts in the ground, the remarkable shifts in habits and realities. And I always cry, don't panic about this bit, because at the moment, while I'm having PTSD about the thing that started my career, literally repeating in front of my eyes, I've also got my own hot things going on with a woman at the back who reminds me about 40 years of change. As drug-addled me before surgery can ask a wahine Māori surgeon to karakia. That is change. And that is what I hold on to with all of those headlines. I would have really liked to have had a big, beautiful photo of her on the screen, because this beautiful wahine Māori is one of many representations of change that have occurred. And I think that if we were to describe this time, it would be about a move away from symbolic advocacy to embodied recognition. And that is where our research fits. Our research is about embodied recognition of what already exists, and from that, what can grow. And with that, I've just probably disappointed all of my law lecturers by saying the law is currently irrelevant. I do want to make some comments to both of the treaty partners, because I don't think, obviously, that the Crown side of the treaty partnership is up to anything good right now. But equally, I don't think that we are realising our own potential. So I want to comment on a couple of things. The first is my experience of working with the Crown. And I had the great fortune of doing Ngāi Tahu's government relations under one of our treaty settlement negotiators. And he's a remarkable Māori genius whose most valuable advice to me was the way to work with the Crown is you turn up, you convince the Crown they've got a very big problem, and then you hand them a pre-made solution. Because, why would we expect public servants, many of whom are there with open, good hearts, but have a very real responsibility to be risk managers. Why would we expect people with risk management as one of their principal job responsibilities to be able to create maverick solutions? We just shouldn't expect it. And I think Hone Harawira once said that why are we expecting someone on a horse like a white knight to come through the door and save us? If they tried, we'd tell them to off anyway. It's time to be our own, not white knights, effectively. And my experience of doing lots of things with the Crown is that if you can build it, then it can become real. And I think there are plenty of examples in this room and online of people who have embraced that it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission ethic and built things that have flown. Whānau water, beautiful example. But you do have to move if we're going to do that building from arguing and validating the legitimacy of the case for the thing to making the thing. And I think there's a really tricky transition from being advocate to builder. And it's definitely not a solo sport. And I want to talk about one of the very not solo sports that I was really surprised and humbled to get lost in for a few years, which is Hara Waiora. So Hara Waiora has been adopted by the Treasury. It's a Mātauranga Māori derived wellbeing framework that exists alongside our living standards framework. So our living standards framework, we pretty much borrowed internationally. And what it's supposed to do is take us away from our obsession with GDP to think about broader notions of wellbeing to guide all of our policy. And inside government, they knew that they had not dealt with the Māori factor well. And the outcome of that was, instead of cultural accessorisation of putting something on the living standards framework, there was a mandate to create something bespoke that came from us. And some of our great taniwha, Dame Naida, Rikirangi Gage, the late Professors Manuka Henare and Uncle Piri Shasha, they were the ones that sat in deep wānanga to develop Hara Waiora. And I got a phone call from Uncle Trevor at the Treasury, who's one of our most senior Māori public servants, saying, "Girl, come and do this." I was like, "Oh, yeah, we should do this." He's like, "No, girl, come and do this." And it was, I think, one of those beautiful things of I had no idea what we were actually doing, and this is what emerged. And I really value it as a way of thinking about pathways to well-being. And there's lots that could be said about how all of the component parts fit. But that's not what I want to do today, because apparently I'm supposed to do better time management than is my nature. And I want to talk about what's happened to Hara Waiora, because what Hara Waiora asks is not just that we think about these dimensions or domains of well-being and their interrelationship with different eyes. What Hara Waiora has evolved into is a complete toolkit that asks policymakers to do very tangible, very different things at each stage of the policy cycle. So we could have stopped Hara Waiora at the point when we had that beautiful graphic that invited people to think about what would it look like having Wairua as the source of well-being. We could have just asked people to contemplate that. And if we had done, then it would have joined countless other kaupapa Māori frameworks that provide some conceptual expansion. Nice, but doesn't tell people what to do with their hands. So what we spent time doing was working out at each of those stages really practical things for policymakers to do that are a very tangible habit breaker. But they're not just a habit breaker. What Hara Waiora was intended to do, as said by fearless people like Dame Nader, was to rewire the way the Crown thinks. This is constitutional revolution by stealth. And I think each of us, in our different ways, every time we get something from a symbolic place to an enacted, a real place that changes what human hands does, is creating constitutional change by stealth. And to me, that is our response to the existential assault we find ourselves in now. It's to do more than capture people's minds. It is to give people's hands very different things to do. What embeds the status quo more powerfully than an idea are habits that are unbroken. As everyone who's promised to join a gym on the 1st of January and never did knows. So with Hara Waiora, this is just one of the conceptual explainers, because what it asks policymakers to do is to go back to root cause identification, both in understanding system dynamics that are creating a particular problem, but also understanding a way of framing the determinants of well-being across all of the levels, rather than just focusing on behavioural or structural or those ethereal meaning-based dimensions. It gives them a way of looking at all of that in a structured kind of way. And this piece of work has been remarkable, being able to wānanga with all of those taniwha, utterly precious. Seeing how receptive government is to this, utterly mind-blowing. The Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, who are responsible for doing the training for policy people across government, want to adopt Hara Waiora into their central policy program, not as an addition to the policy tools they teach policymakers to use, but as the main tool for policymakers to use. And they want to do that not because there's a rights-based argument, but because these tools are better. Because DPNC believes that these tools lead to both more rigorous and innovative policy outcomes. At no point in the development of Hara Waiora have we mounted a treaty argument that we have a right for this to be used within government. We have built something that government wants because it enables government to do things it currently can't. And in doing that, it joins a whole flotilla of examples with exactly the same characteristics. Maida's vaccination clinic. We all know that government couldn't do that. Ngāi Tahu reaching 10,000 families after the Christchurch earthquake that government couldn't reach. We can do things that are better. And this isn't buying into the, if we are seen as less than, then we must prove ourselves to be more than, because that's not in any way helpful for any of our psyches. But what we can do is concentrate on being builders of solutions. But to do that, we've also got to work on ourselves. Because I think one thing that the rights-based argument has done inside our communities that is problematic is that it's made us think that mana motuhake is something we claim from the Crown on the basis of rights being recognised. And sure, that's a component, but it's only one component. And fundamentally, all that rights-based argument does, as opposed to the Crown, is give us the space for mana motuhake to breathe. We've already got the space. What we need is to fill it with things of meaning. And what I was taught by our settlement negotiators is that the settlement it has its own stealth mechanisms, that we have to look at the things we can make today, not for what they look like, but for what they do. So Ngāi Tahu invented being, having in settlements, being a member of 150 different advisory boards. We didn't do that to be a member of an advisory board. We created that mechanism because at the time of the Ngāi settlement, racism was very tangible and we hated the other people on those boards and they hated us. So we didn't do it because we wanted to argue with them. We did it because we wanted to build real relationships and maybe have babies with them. You know, this was about cultural change in that broadest sense. So that advisory board thing, which looks like we are looking for decision-making power but got its second lesser cousin, isn't actually that at all. It was a stealth mechanism which had an utterly different purpose. And that type of thinking, I think, is infused throughout all of our most loved, highest impact kaupapa Māori wellbeing initiatives. We are ninjas at what we do is not what we mean. And to be able to see that, we've got to build our own imaginations. We've got to think with Māori eyes. One of my most favorite examples is one of our prominent chiefs talks about when he was a young fella, he got given the job at the marae of putting the salt and pepper shakers out. And if you look at that with government eyes, you fixate on the salt and pepper shakers because that's the tangible thing. But what actually happened there was that young fella was conferred a responsibility by someone he revered, potentially was frightened of. We know how that rolls. And that conferral of responsibility gave him a place to stand, which created a particular trajectory. That's what we do inside kaupapa Māori transformation. We fundamentally alter trajectories through these hidden mechanisms. That's my opinion. And I think that the value of our research is to progressively give that voice and visibility. Because as lovely as it is to talk about salt and pepper shakers every time I get the chance, it doesn't sound very legitimate, right? It doesn't sound like it's something that could go tidily in a quantitative evidence table. And I don't do quant work, so whatever the quant language is that you should insert there, just do that now. Independently, you'll do it better than me. I think that is the role of our research. Fundamentally, the purpose of our research should be to fuel Māori imagination that uses Māori eyes, to see those things that would otherwise be invisible, because those things that would otherwise be invisible are the things that I believe have the greatest impact. I am not literally a runner, but by nature, I do have avoidant tendencies. I can guarantee that without a wahine Māori surgeon, I would not be on a responsible health journey right now. It would have been too much. So I can't mihi to you enough, e te tōkana, for your presence, for the fact that you embody intergenerational dreams, and for those who support you and create the space for you to do what you do. And in that, I'd conclude with, we are all part of the muka, right? We all have a place. We can't all be a surgeon, not least because some of us would get very queasy, I expect. But just having one surgeon here or one surgeon there, we know that it's not enough. It is about the multiplicity of fibres within muka that give it its strength and its adaptability. This muka could be literally anything, but no single fibre can be anything but breakable. And to me, that is the greatest significance of an event like this, is that it enables us to be that mafia and to give the mafia a plan. Because whether you are building things inside government, whether you are doing things that are about validating the practice already in our communities, whether you're trying to fuel our communities' imagination, we need it all. Because the silver bullet metaphor was always poorly made, but it's even more poorly made when we think about the complexity of the time that we find ourselves in. There is nothing of significance which can be solved by a singular linear solution, but there are plenty that can be solved with cleverly, carefully, tidily prepped muka. Nā reira, tēnā rā koutou.
Aia.